Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this webinar, Path to Chartership, How to Become a Chartered Environmentalist or Registered Environmental Practitioner. Today's webinar is in partnership with the Society for the Environment, or SocEnv, and is the first in their Spotlight series. The Spotlight series highlights SocEnv's 24 licensed members. Starting with us at IEMA, we're providing a mini-series on the path to chartership throughout March. We're joined today by several speakers who will provide you with practical guidance on how to become a full member and chartered environmentalist with IEMA, or a practitioner member and registered environmental practitioner. We will take you through the application process with IEMA and explain some of the things that assessors look for in your application. We're joined today with Megan. So Megan Louis is the Membership and Standards Manager at IEMA and is responsible for professional membership applications and assessments, customer service and member retention. We also have Vandana Mehta, who is one of the assessors for IEMA's practitioner level membership and registered environmental practitioner. We have Carol Brass with us, who is one of the assessors for IEMA's full level membership and registered and chartered environmentalist. And we also have Bill Underwood here, joining us from the Society for the Environment, who can take any questions towards the end about SocEnv. My name is Lisa Paul and I'm your host for today's webinar. I'm the Membership Marketing Manager at IEMA and responsible for making sure that members get great value from their professional body. Before we move on to presentations, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded. The recording of the presentations will be made available for IEMA members on IEMA.net and on the Society for the Environment's website shortly after this webinar. What's going to happen today is each speaker will talk through their presentation and there'll be time for questions and answers towards the end of the webinar. So please don't hesitate to send in your questions as we go through the session, and I'll be able to look through and see what you're talking about and what you're asking us for. Before we start though, we thought it would be interesting to hear a little bit about why you're here. So we'd like to launch a poll. And the poll is just to understand about why you would like to either go for or what level of membership you're interested in. I know some people are saying that the audio quality of me is not very good, so I apologise for that. But I'm not quite sure what's going on. It might be my internet. I don't know if any of the speakers can hear me okay, or is it just coming through on the recording that's bad?
Yeah, no, the sound's not good from my end, I'm afraid.
Slightly robotic.
Okay.
But I can understand you, but it's not
okay, I apologise for that. I think it might be to do with my internet connection. So don't worry, you're not going to hear too much more from me. I'm going to put you onto the speakers in 1 second. But just before we do, I'm going to launch this poll and ask you to talk about which membership you're interested in. So you should be able to see a poll and you should be able to fill that in. I can see some people are joining that now. So I'll just give a few more seconds on that one and then I'll close it. So it looks like the majority of people are here for full membership and CEnv, but there's quite a few who are also interested in learning about practitioner membership and REnvP. A few of you who aren't sure, so hopefully we'll be able to answer your questions today. So I guess that's it from me. Sorry about the audio. Hopefully we'll move on. The presenters will be a lot better than me. So I'm just going to pass the sharing over to Megan, who's going to take you through a bit of an introduction about our levels. So I'll just make the switch now. Megan, you should have the option there to share your screen.
Just give me 1 second, it hasn't come up.
Do you have that now? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, can you see my presentation?
Yeah, all good. So if you want to go through your presentation, Megan, then we'll move on to Dip and Carol later on.
Fab. Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you again for joining today's webinar. As Lisa said, I am Megan Louie. I'm in charge of our membership and standards at IEMA. And today we're going to take you through becoming a Registered Environmental Practitioner or a Chartered Environmentalist with IEMA. So if we just quickly look at the aim of today's webinar, we'll take a brief look at who the Society for the Environment are and mainly their relationship with IEMA, just in case anybody isn't aware. And then we'll move on to look at the link between IEMA membership grades with REnvP and CEnv, in particular how the membership competencies map together. We'll look at the registrations in more detail, covering the assessment processes, what you need to do as a candidate, and also what are our assessors looking for to demonstrate competence to the standards. So if we firstly take a quick look at the Society for the Environment, who are namely known by their acronym SocEnv. So for those who may not be familiar with SocEnv, they are the custodian of the registrations REnvP and CEnv. Ultimately, SocEnv are the body responsible for the registration of environmental professionals. And in 2004, SocEnv were granted their Royal Charter, and that allowed them to award Chartered Environmentalist status to experienced and dedicated environmental professionals. They do not directly award or assess individuals for any registration status. They operate as an umbrella organisation, and they work with member bodies who are licensed to award the statuses on their behalf. There are around, I believe, 24 licensed member bodies in total, of which IEMA is one. And IEMA do actually register more CEnvs than any other body on an annual basis. Currently, there are over 7,500 chartered environmentalists worldwide. They're drawn from a range of diverse fields covering engineering, waste management, and many more. So I've mentioned that IEMA are a licensed member body for SocEnv. This means that IEMA are approved to award either REnvP or CEnv on SocEnv's behalf, and that's done through our own assessment processes. So for each of the grades, the SocEnv registrations have been mapped to IEMA's memberships. The diagram on the left of this slide shows how the memberships of IEMA align to SocEnv registrations. So if you are a candidate and you want to achieve practitioner membership and REnvP, or full membership and CEnv, you can apply for both the IEMA membership and the SocEnv registration in one dual application. Now, there are the competencies for REnvP and CEnv are separate to IEMA's membership competencies. However, the hard work has been done for you by IEMA. When we became a licensed member body with SocEnv, we mapped and aligned the IEMA membership competencies to those set by SocEnv for REnvP and CEnv. This basically means that as a candidate, when you apply for a dual application, if you are competent to the IEMA membership standard for either practitioner membership or full membership, by default, you are also competent to the REnvP or CEnv competencies. You do not need to refer to both sets of IEMA competencies and SocEnv competencies when preparing your assessment. You just need to refer to IEMA. The IEMA membership competencies are aligned around our sustainability skills map. And if you don't know what that is, it's the circular diagram on the right-hand side of the slide. This circular diagram displays our 13 membership competencies, and these are the competencies that make up all of our professional membership grades. For each grade, you will be required to demonstrate each of those 13 competencies, but the level of detail, the depth and breadth of knowledge and demonstration required will differ per grade. We then have our membership standards, which sit behind the skills gap, and they detail the specific requirements for each of those grades. I'll just quickly give a brief overview of the skills map and the competencies for those who may not be familiar with it. On the inner circle, so you'll have the 2 core knowledge competencies. At the very core of high-performing professionals is a requirement to understand the fundamentals of sustainability and business. These underpin what it means to be a sustainability professional in today's economy and recognise that knowing about sustainability alone isn't enough. There is also a need to know how organisations work, and you have to talk the same language as your colleagues. Around the middle circle are the technical knowledge competencies. These can sometimes be referred to as contextual knowledge competencies, as they cover environment, social, economic and business governance horizons. The scope of these technical knowledge competencies will be relevant to each individual, their experience and their career aspirations. But regardless of the scope, all IEMA members will have to cover fundamentals of issues and principles, relevant policy and legislation, relevant management and assessment tools, and relevant innovation and leading practices. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach with these, but if you refer to our membership standards, more detail on the exact requirements per grade will be listed. Finally, on the outer circle are the skills, or skills for sustainable leadership. These are key to putting the technical knowledge into good use and into practice. Now, before handing over to our two assessors, I want to introduce the registrations to you and provide an overview of the processes for achieving them. Then Dip and Carol will both take over and they will give you insight into what you need to do with your application and your assessment. So if we look at Registered Environmental Practitioner first, or REnvP, this registration has only recently been launched back in January 2021, and IEMA were one of the first licensed member bodies approved for award in REnvP. It is a registration for those working at practitioner level and is therefore naturally aligned to IEMA's practitioner membership grade. And it's for those who have a combination of academic knowledge and practical environmental experience. So you can be either someone with a core environmentalist role or a specialist who has to apply environmental knowledge or expertise to your core job role. REnvP joins two existing SocEnv registrations. So you've got REnv Tech, or Registered Environmental Technician, which isn't something IEMA offer, and CEnv. REnvP sits in the middle of them both in order to demonstrate a stepping stone path to chartership. So as part of your career aspirations, you may wish to use REnvP as a clear pathway to environmental chartership. Whilst gaining the additional knowledge and experience required for CEnv, you can demonstrate your ambition with this REnvP registration. The REnvP and CEnv competencies are directly linked, offering a progressionary route to a chartership goal. And just to remind you that if you want CEnv or REnvP, refer to the practitioner and full membership competencies, which are also aligned. If, however, chartership isn't a goal or aspiration for you, then REnvP is a designation and level of recognition in its own right. It is a mark of professionalism and competence within the workplace, so it can be the perfect fit for you and your career aims. If we now look at how you achieve REnvP with IEMA, there are two routes depending on your current membership status. So if you are new to practitioner membership, so that can either be as a non-member with IEMA or you're a member but at one of our lower professional grades, you can apply for the dual process route. With this route, there are two elements to the assessment. There's an entry online exam followed by a written assessment of competence. The entry examination is assessing your knowledge of the membership competencies reflected in the two inner circles of the skills map. So it's those core knowledge competencies and the technical knowledge competencies. The exam is online, it's open book and it's multiple choice, and you have 1 hour to answer 30 questions and the pass mark is 70%. The second element, which is the written assessment of competence, Dip will cover in more detail shortly, but this is assessing your ability to apply the knowledge that you've learned with the relevant skill within the workplace. Just one additional point I want to note here is if you have completed an IEMA approved degree where the relevant knowledge has been gained through a degree which IEMA has mapped to its standards, you may be eligible for exemption to the assessment, to the entry exam. You still need to do the written assessment. So if you are unsure, feel free to contact the membership and standards team. We'll give out the details and we can go through that with you. At the bottom of the slide, you'll see something called the Bespoke Route. Now, this is an option for anybody who has previously achieved practitioner membership, so you are currently a practitioner member, and you wish to add REnvP without having to go through the practitioner assessment again. Dip again will cover this briefly in her presentation, but for this option, your competence to practitioner membership has previously been assessed. So what we are looking for now is a demonstration of ongoing competence to the required standard. For both of these routes, you will have to apply online first, and what this is doing is it's giving us your commitment to ongoing CPD and also your commitment to adhering to the principles of the IEMA Code of Professional Conduct and the SocEnv Code of Professional Conduct. If we move on to looking at Chartered Environmentalist, or CEnv, this is aligned to IEMA's full membership. This status is increasingly seen internationally as a highly desirable demonstration of an individual's competence. So for environmental professionals, independent of discipline, chartership reflects a high level of skill, greater responsibilities with management and leadership, and sets them apart from others working in the field. It also enhances career prospects through a demonstration of commitment to professional standards. CEnv is for a professional who can demonstrate applying a high level of environmental knowledge, understanding and skills to protect and enhance the environment in a sustainable way. You would be someone who has a master's level knowledge or equivalent and with the relevant practical experience to support that. A key point to note here for IEMA full membership and CEnv is that communication is absolutely vital for this grade. So it's really important that you consider this when preparing your assessment for full and CEnv, which we'll move on to now. So for the process for achieving CEnv status, it's similar in approach to REnvP, that there are 2 routes. If you are new to IEMA full membership, again, you can either be a non-member or you can be somebody at a lower grade. You would go through our dual application process. So with this application process, you apply online, you commit to ongoing development and the principles set out in the IEMA and SocEnv Code of Professional Conducts. From this point, you then have 4 weeks to submit your written submission to us. Now, this written piece consists of a 2,000-word supporting statement, which needs to be well structured, and it also needs to demonstrate your ability to communicate in writing, along with a tailored CV. These then need to be supported by 2 witness verifications. You are then recommended, and it is only a recommendation I need to flag here, to include any relevant degree certificates along with a form of photo identification. You will then proceed onto what we call the peer review interview, for which your assessors will be peers in the field, and they will use your CV and your supporting statement to understand which membership criteria and topics to discuss at your interview. Carol will go through the assessment in more detail, but I did want to flag that when preparing for your assessment, I would recommend using our full membership and Chartered Environmentalist assessment guidance pack. This is downloadable from the IEMA website. Towards the end of the document, you'll find a handy summary checklist, which I totally recommend to use as a prompt. Again, like with the Bespoke Route for REnvP, we also offer a Bespoke Route, or a streamlined route it's called, for gaining CEnv. And this is for someone who has already been through the full membership assessment. You may be at the IEMA fellow membership, but as long as you've been through the full membership assessment, you are eligible to go through our Bespoke Route. Here, we are just looking for a demonstration of ongoing competence to the full membership standard. And this is done again through a written submission, a tailored CV, and a CPD submission covering the last 3 years. I will now hand over firstly to Dip and then to Carol, and they will be able to give you some assessor insights into what I've just discussed.
Fabulous, thanks Meg. Is my audio any better?
It's still a little bit robotic, but I can understand you.
Okay, just switched over to Dip's screen. Fabulous.
Brilliant. Can you all see it?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, that's great. So thank you very much. Thanks, Megan and Lisa as well. My name is Dip Vandana, or Dip for short, and I am a practitioner and REnvP assessor for IEMA. So I'm marking the assessments of competence that come through here. And I'll be going through a little bit of kind of a repeat of what Megan said in terms of the process, but then actually going into more detail as to what kind of things you should be like some tips and handy guidance, hopefully, to help you with that application as well. As Megan said, I'm probably going to be focusing more on IEMA, so the practitioner IEMA membership competencies, but just remember, as Megan said, that these are already being aligned to the Registered Environmental Practitioner membership, so the SocEnv REnvP membership standards. So we don't need to worry about that. If you meet IEMA, you already meet REnvP. So lots of acronyms, so hopefully you're keeping up with all the different acronyms we have here. Okay, so just a reminder, it's written in a slightly different format to how Meg showed it, but this is the IEMA skills map, sustainability skills map, and these are exactly the same as the IEMA competencies in terms of the core competencies. So the IEMA standard has 13 competencies, the same as the skills map, but within each one, so within number 1 to 13, you will have various kind of assessment criteria, and that's where actually the difference lies between the associate, which is the kind of entry level associate or graduate, to the practitioner, to the chartered level, to the full membership level as well. What we're looking at here in these IEMA competencies is much more a kind of graduate level of knowledge. So we'll see from the kind of competencies 1 to 6, core knowledge and technical or contextual knowledge. That all links to knowledge aspects at a graduate level. And then in the skills section, we're looking at it at an operational level, kind of, so you're working in the field as an operational member, as a practitioner, Whereas when you're going to Chartered, which Carol will go through, we're looking much more at the managerial level, kind of higher level of responsibilities, looking more strategically as well. So at this level, it's operational, doing things, kind of carrying out projects and completing them as well. So these are the three kind of areas: core knowledge, technical contextual knowledge, and skills. Those three kind of circles that you saw in the skills map, with competencies 1 to 13 within there. So just wanted to remind you what's assessed at each stage of the assessment. So there are 2 stages of the practitioner assessment. There's the certified course or the direct study route. So that's the kind of the first part of it. And within both of these, the first section is, if you're going through a certified course or an approved degree level, you'll be completing that course or that degree. Or if you're going through the direct study route, so you're applying directly to IEMA to get practitioner membership, you do self-study and you take the IEMA assessment, which I'll go through in a little bit. In this section of the assessment, we're assessing all the competencies, but we're weighting it towards the knowledge side. So the inner 2 circles, so the core knowledge and the technical knowledge, learning outcomes or competencies 1 to 6 are the primary ones that are being tested. But there is also some kind of questions on learning outcomes or competencies 7 to 13. So even though they are skills, so it's more practical, there are some knowledge-based questions on those. For example, what is quantitative data? What is qualitative data? What are some of the change management models? So those are kind of the theories behind some of the skill sections will be assessed as well. But the overall weighting is much more towards knowledge. Within a certified course, this would obviously be kind of assessed through coursework, if you go down the certificate environmental management route, or through your degree modules and your assessments that you get in your degree, if it is an approved degree through IEMA. Once you've done the exam or you've done the course and you've passed that, the second part is the assessment of competence that is submitted. And this one, again, all competencies are marked and checked, but they are weighted towards the skills, because this is the part where you talk about how you've implemented that knowledge within the workplace, and this is that chance to give evidence to support the application. So it's weighted much more towards competencies 7 to 13, the skills, implementing environmental management systems, collecting data and analysing it, but obviously that has to link back a little bit towards the core knowledge as well, to show why and how it links back to the core and technical knowledge as well. So they both parts of the application do assess both all the competencies, but there is a weighting towards either knowledge or towards the skills. Okay, so I'll just talk a little bit about the multiple choice assessment, which is the way in the direct study route. So if you're thinking of applying for practitioner member through direct study, you will have this multiple choice assessment that you have to complete. And a few things to note within here is that, well, all the questions are firstly linked to the PIEMA standard. Again, that's been mapped to REnvP, so no need to look at that, just look at that PIEMA standard. So this is a really important document to refer to when you're revising. Make sure you check all the assessment criteria underneath each part of the competency. You don't just take 1 to 13 as just 1 to 13. Look in the detail behind that, because there'll be questions referring to all the assessment criteria within that standard. So do look at this document. There are 30 questions, so 30 questions, 1 hour, so theoretically 2 minutes per question, but obviously some might take a bit longer, some a bit less. Each question has got 4 potential options and only 1 correct answer. So there'll never be the case where it's right 3 of the 4 or 2 of the 4. There'll only always be 1 correct answer and 4 potential options from that. There are just things to bear in mind, that there are negative questions potentially that have been included. So do read the questions carefully. Do make sure, is it asking for the greatest or the least? Is it asking for which is not of the following or which of the following is correct? So look at the questions carefully, because there are negative questions within there as well. So asking which of the following is not, or which is the least. Again, also, I don't know, some of you may be familiar with multiple choice assessments, and in a lot of them, usually some guidance that some people say is, oh, if you see all of the above as an option, please tick that, because it's usually always correct. But with the IEMA one, just be aware it's not always correct. So if you do see the option within those 4 potential answers saying all of the above, don't always think that that's always going to be the answer. You've got to read the question carefully. It might not be the case as well. Within the multiple choice assessment, there are 2 sections. In the first part, they've got individual questions with all the 4 options. And then the second part of the assessment has got case studies where you have to read through the case study in more detail, and then there'll be linked questions to that case study. So there might be 4 or 5 questions linked to that case study at the beginning. So you'll have need a bit more time to read through that case study and then answer the questions linked to it. So 2 parts, first part individual and second part case study based. Along with this though, every single question, whether they're individual or case study based, will always generally use scenarios in which that knowledge area has to be applied. So they'll generally never ask what is a qualitative data, what is the definition of quantitative data, what is climate change. They won't really ask kind of a basic kind of definition question. They will always give a scenario, and then from that scenario, you'll have potential options and you'll have to utilize your knowledge of climate change, of data, of potentially ecosystem services to figure out which of the ones is the correct answer as well. So it's about applying that knowledge within scenarios that will be tested. And because this is meant to be at kind of graduate level, it will be in a lot more detail than, say, associate membership level, which might be asking simpler questions based on definitions. And finally, just be aware that there may be some data questions, so just ensure you've got access to a calculator as well. Okay, so just give an example, which is one of the examples that you would see in the practice questions that's available on the website. We can see here the questions about global warming potentials, and we may need a calculator for this. So it's saying the following are 20-year global warming potentials of selected greenhouse gases: nitrous oxide 280, methane 56, carbon dioxide 1, HFC 152A 460. An organisation releases the following amounts of these substances into the atmosphere over a calendar year: nitrous oxide 2 tonnes, methane 3 tonnes, carbon dioxide 300 tonnes, HFC 152A 1 tonne. Which substance would have the greatest contribution to climate change? So you can see this question is testing competency 7, which is about data. So can you use data and figure out the correct answer? It's also testing competency 5 about environmental management and assessment tools, because essentially this is calculating carbon footprints, calculating carbon emissions using activity data times the emission conversion factor, which in this case would be global warming potential. So you'd be multiplying the tonnage activity data by the GWP, the global warming potential. And so this is kind of testing 2 things in a scenario within the kind of exam. And if you looked at it and you calculated it, you'll find that A, nitrous oxide is the correct answer in there. So you just got to do a simple calculation of multiplication to figure out which one is the correct answer. Just be aware, this question asks for the greatest. Another question might ask for the least as well. So these are some examples of the multiple choice assessment, and you'll find more on the website itself. So I'll just have speak a bit more about the assessment of competence, which is actually probably an area that people do ask for more guidance about as well. What you do need to submit for this is you need to submit a completed assessment of competence form, which is a template that IEMA provide you. A tailored CV, so this is in your own style, so this is not a template that IEMA provides you, just provide your own CV, and witness verification forms for all the case studies that you submit, and this is a template that IEMA provide as well. Within the assessment of competence form, which is the main kind of bulk of the assessment, it consists of the following kind of parts that you have to complete. So we need you to complete an introduction where you explain your role, your kind of the submission, your sector. Then you go into the case studies. We recommend 4 case studies, but it could be less or more. Principal learning lessons from those case studies and your future learning and development plan. So all of this is within the template, and you have to complete all of these sections and submit to IEMA with the CV and witness verification forms. A few guidance points just to note within the assessment of competence, and it's quite useful just to see this compared to when Carol later talks about the CEnv, which is a much more free-flowing kind of 2,000-word paper for Chartered Environmentalist and full membership. In this case, it's slightly different, but there are some similarities as well. So the first thing I would say, as with full membership and practitioner, make sure you do tailor the CV for this application. All of us will have a CV out there, but it's important to try and make sure it links into the IEMA membership competencies. For example, if you are an HSE manager, so you're doing health and safety is your primary role, you also do environment, your CV may already have lots of mixture of health and safety and environment within it. which is fine, but try and make sure you kind of you enhance the environmental requirements for this application, because if it's full of health and safety information and no environment, it might look, for the assessor, it kind of just doesn't demonstrate as much of the IEMA competencies. And we do look at the CV as well as the assessment of competence, because there might be cases where we think actually they're not demonstrating this competency very well in the actual form. So we look at the CV and say, oh, hang on a sec, they've got this case study or they've got this experience that could be useful, and we might ask you for further information on that. So do tailor the CV for the application. Utilize all the sections of the application form. It's not just the case study parts, the introduction, lesson learned, and the future development sections are important too, especially the introduction, because the environment is a massive part. There's got so many different roles within it, and the assessors all come from a particular discipline. So I work mainly in environmental management. So if you're in EIA or sustainability or waste management, and you're using so many acronyms within your application, an assessor might not understand every single part of it. So do use the introduction to give a context. Don't use too many acronyms as well. That may not be obvious to everyone as well. Where possible, do use the recommended STAR format. So in here, the case studies do recommend that you use this particular format to write them in, which is situation. And this is where you can add a link to the background knowledge and kind of that learning outcomes, competencies 1 to 6. Task, what you had to do, actions and results. Plus you can add an optional reflection. This will help focus the application and not kind of make it very broad and very kind of wide and kind of like a novel, instead, which we want to actually just see where the competencies are quite succinctly. And make sure that the case study length is thought of as well. Don't make it so brief that it's like 2 bullet points per STAR. So you need to cover it sufficiently, but we don't want a thesis either, because we will find it difficult to find the points within there. Some common pitfalls that are seen, just a few things just to note within there. Be aware that try not to make sure that the same competencies are shown in all case studies. So if you are working in a specific role, avoid that pitfall of, okay, I did this, so I did data collection for waste in case study 1, energy in case study 3, paper for 3, and water for 4, because you're showing the same competencies. Even if your primary role is auditing or EIA and it's kind of similar projects, try and show out a different competency within them. One might be focused on biodiversity, one might be focused on, I don't know, legal compliance, another one on something else, but try and show different competencies, even if you have a kind of specialized role within the case studies. Make sure you don't just focus on the processes. So a common pitfall we see is that someone focuses just on the processes, but then forgets about, well, actually what happened, what were the environmental outcomes? So they say, especially kind of sometimes in EIA, you talk about the actions, but actually what came out of it, is there what mitigating actions were there to protect the environment, to protect and enhance sustainability. So just be aware of that we are looking for skills, but the skills are there to help protect and enhance the environment. So what actually happened, what was the successful outcome that came out of it, or even if it wasn't successful, what was it that you learned from it as well. There can be cases of insufficient experience, so you might be going along the right path, but there might just be not enough in the case studies. And so we generally say at practitioner level, you should have, it's not a key set in stone, but generally about 1 year plus of full-time environmental experience or sustainability experience. So if you're an HSE role, you might need more because you're doing health and safety as well, or quality as well. So just be aware that it's generally around 1 year's experience or more that we think you should have enough experience for a practitioner, but based on how much you're doing within the sector. Another pitfall is that the skills are shown, but in a health and safety or project management context as well. So just be aware of that. So you need to put it in an environmental context. We rather than I throughout the case studies. And then finally, there's a bit about the balance of knowledge versus practical experience. Some don't link at all to any background linkages of sustainable development goals or climate change or others, and others are more like academic papers. So make sure there's a balance between those. Okay, I'm just aware of time, so I'm not going to go through this case study right now, but what you'll find is this example case study is in the notes and the guidance that you can see on the website, but it does use this STAR format, so you can see kind of the level of how much is written in STAR, and this is how it's written within the guidance pack. So have a look at that. And a reflection as well. This kind of shows what kind of things you'd put in a case study for energy management. Is this one exactly? One thing to note about this is that on its own would not be sufficient for practitioner membership. You'd need 4 of those on different items, but have a look through the guidance pack after this call, and if you've got any queries, contact the membership team as well. So just quickly going to Bespoke Route before handing over to Carol. So the REnvP Bespoke Route is where you've already got practitioner membership, but you also want to add on Registered Environmental Practitioner. So again, they've been mapped to PIEMA, so you just need to check against the PIEMA competencies. And what you need to do for the Bespoke Route is you need to show that you're still meeting those competencies. So you submit a letter of application, which is no more than 1 A4 side, where you show actually how you're meeting those competencies, and do refer to them. Look at the core knowledge, technical knowledge and skills, especially if you kind of become a PIEMA member before 2016, when the membership competencies changed. So you do check them again. You need to submit a CPD form, which is a template provided by IEMA, link that into PIEMA, and an up-to-date CV. Again, tailor it and map it to the competencies as well, with 2 verification statements. So just a quick summary. PIEMA is set at the operational level of the IEMA skills map. There are 2 parts of the assessment. The first part weighted to knowledge and the second to skills, but all are still covered in each part. And again, the REnvP has already been mapped to PIEMA, so don't look at both sets of competencies, focus on PIEMA. Okay, so I'll just hand over now to Carol. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get to go through the case studies, but they are all on the website.
Fabulous, thank you. Can you hear me now okay? It's Lisa here.
Yes, it's better. It's much better now.
Fabulous. I have dialed in using a trusty old phone. So Carol, I'm just going to switch to your screen. You should see a notification now to share yours. Let me know if that doesn't come up. That's it.
So can you hear me all right?
Yeah, fabulous. Go ahead, Carol.
And the slides are good, are they? They're showing, are they?
Yeah, it's fine.
Excellent, good. Yeah, so I'm Carol Brass. Let's get the slides to move forward. I always seem to have this difficulty when they don't move. There we go. Right, yeah, so I'm Carol Brass. I'm a full member and CEnv assessor for IEMA, and I'm one of about 30 assessors who do that work. I'm conscious of the time, so there's more slides here than I've probably got time to talk about. And I certainly made the decision that I'm not going to tell you about the bespoke option. You've heard that there's 2 options to go for CEnv. You can do CEnv only if you're already a member. That's not correct. That's like if you already hold full membership, you can go for CEnv only route. But that applies to very few of us. And so I'm not going to spend the limited time that I've got today on that. Your best tack, if you want to do that, is to phone up and get guidance from the website on that. So I'm going to concentrate entirely on the dual application process, where people apply for CEnv and full membership at the same time. So, does anyone remember those days where we'd be sitting in a room full of people and we cast our eye across the room, and probably in our own mind, we'd be thinking that person's probably a full member or this person's a practitioner. And we'd have kind of a summary in our head of what the key differences were. And I think you need to hang on to those aspects that you summarise in your head, because that'll help you be really successful at applying for CEnv and full membership level. The distinguishing points that separate a practitioner from full. Are they the person leading the room? Are they the manager? Are they the person with more of a strategic overview? Have they got more experience? And all these kind of summary words will be really helpful to you when you come to do your application. So actually, I was really proud of this slide, but I've just looked at it today and realised that it looks like something from the news. It looks like COVID-19, so apologies for the connotations and that. But what I think is an effective way of summarising the different membership levels for me is to think about how you're extending your spheres of influence as you move up the membership levels. So REnvP, your sphere of influence is around the project level. You may be leading projects, but your influence is really at project level. As you move up to CEnv and full, your reach of influence is starting to expand out into the whole organisation level, and maybe even at sector in certain instances, which is where you would be sitting when you apply for fellow membership, you'd be at sector level. So if our REnvP member is using tools, project problem solving, delivering compliance, managing small projects, supporting larger projects, then a full member is evaluate. They're not just using tools, they've got an ability to evaluate them, to be critical of them and see how they might need to improve for the future. They're looking at problem solving at a bigger scale, probably at organisational level. They're going beyond legal compliance. So they're happily encouraging projects or organisations to go that little bit further than is required on the legal minimum. They're now managing large projects and maybe leading organisational change. So when you get this ability to look at these slides later, it's helpful to flip between the two of these, because again, that gives you some key words that summarise the differences in how you should be thinking about the membership grades. Now, we've talked about the skills map already, so I just would like to focus on 2 of the IEMA competencies that I think are really key to distinguishing between a practitioner REnvP membership level and the full and CEnv membership level, and they are 2 and 13 in my opinion. So 2 is one of the core knowledge competencies, the principles and issues and business governance, right in the middle, and 13, which is around the leadership for change. And I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about just those 2 competencies, because I think they are kind of often deal breakers between separating yourself from a practitioner to a full. Obviously, all the competencies step up, but those 2 particularly, I think. So this is the wording for IEMA competency 2. And what we're looking at a full member level is that you're able to work the business context to deliver sustainable development action. So you've got knowledge of sustainable development, that's competency 1, and you're able to work your business context, your client's business context or your project business context to be successful at delivering sustainable development action. You may not be involved directly in corporate governance and setting corporate targets, but you should be familiar enough with them that you can use that to help you make a business case to establish actions around reducing carbon, for example, by being able to draw on the corporate ambition to be zero carbon. So at this membership level, you've got confidence of working with senior managers and probably many examples now of developing a good business case. And that you're able to demonstrate the leadership capability, which links closely to the other competency 13 that I'd like to look at. So this is excuse me, this is competency 13, and you can read all the information underneath that on the skills map on the website, so I'm not going to spend time on that. But really this is about, again, it's about, as a full member, your spheres of leadership are now are starting to go beyond project level. They're moving out into whole organisation level, and maybe some examples where you're representing your organisation on wider working groups at sector level. Now, you don't have to be a manager to be successful at applying for a full membership grade. Ultimately, you've got to show capability. And you can do that. I mean, here's some examples of how people who aren't senior managers have approached evidencing that they've got that wider sphere of influence. Perhaps they have projects examples where they've developed really good best practice and they've been able to share that more widely in the organisation, such that the organisation has adopted that good practice more widely. Perhaps they volunteered to set up office green teams that are supporting World Environment Day and the like, and they're starting to kind of engender bottom-up action within the organisation. That's, again, a sphere of influence where you're moving out into the organisation. Perhaps you represent your organisation on a wider forum or a group. Or perhaps you've set up some knowledge sharing topics within your organisation where you're showing initiative and sharing knowledge in a wider context beyond the project level. And as I say, you don't have to be a senior manager to be successful. Ultimately, you've got to show capability. So if you don't have the experience of senior leadership, then approach this application brimming with ideas about how the organisation ought to change. If you were in charge, what would you do? So I actually run monthly sessions where there's a lot more detail that I'll go into about the whole application process, much more than I'm able to do in the 5 minutes or so that I've got left. So I'm just going to very quickly talk about the written paper and the interview process. And if you're interested in finding out more, then sign up to one of the monthly workshops that we're running throughout the year. So The written paper element is a 2,000 word limit, and as Dip says, there are not so many rules perhaps as there are at practitioner level, but ultimately you're demonstrating your capability to communicate by written form in the supporting paper. And it's complemented by your CV, so both documents need to work together. And often the CV can help you overcome the tight 2,000 word limit by being able to list a lot of projects that you perhaps can't focus on in the supporting word limit. So I'm just giving you 3 tips, I guess, in the time that I've got, things to really focus on in your written paper, and 3 things to avoid. So in my experience, I think about 5 case studies is typically what you would cover in the 2,000 word limit, but it's not a hard and fast thing. I've seen people do a supporting paper with only 2 case studies, but generally it's about 5, I think. 13 competencies, cover as many competencies as you can, but that's quite a lot in a 2,000 word limit. And so my recommendation, if you think about the skills map as a wheel, is to cover the skills competencies a minimum, so that's competencies 7 to 13, and then expect to cover the knowledge competencies more as an interview conversation. So that's my advice. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that helps you to kind of perhaps use the word limit a bit more efficiently and effectively. And ultimately, the written piece is a step on the way to coming to interviews. So don't wait for perfection to strike. It's enough to get you the kind of interview conversations that you'd like to have. So if you're clever, then you'll make sure that you the conversations we have with you, for instance, about legal compliance, you set up that conversation in the written piece by referring to the kind of bits of legislation you want to talk about at interview. So 3 things perhaps to avoid. I'm always disappointed when I read a supporting paper and I get to the end of it and I think, actually, I've not really seen evidence of maybe only 2 competencies there. You know, they've given me 2,000 words, but there's very little here that's ticked off any of the competencies. So make sure what you write is relevant to the competencies. And make sure you separate yourself as best you can from the practitioner level in the way that you present yourself, particularly at the beginning. You know, go in with a bang about how strategic you are, how you're leading, how you're working on the big projects. Put those at the beginning, so you set the scene as fast as you can that you're now at full member level and not practitioner. And don't just give me a repeat of the CV. You know, the CV works in conjunction with the supporting paper. So again, it's a bit of a waste of word limit if you just use your 2,000 word limit to repeat the things which could go much better in a CV, like listing all your job history, all the organisations you've worked for. You don't need to say that because I'll read that in the CV. So the interview is the second stage of the process. You'll be interviewed by 2 of us and it'll be about an hour long. Actually, it's, you know, the time will fly by. That seems like quite a long time, but you'll find that it flies by once you get talking about yourself. You may actually even enjoy talking with fellow environmental professionals because enthusiastically about the work that you've been doing, because it's your chance to show off. It is based on your written submission, so the 2 assessors will read your written submission and prepare the kind of conversations they want to have with you that allow you to demonstrate perhaps some of the competencies that were not so well evidenced in your written submission. The key to, although it is going to be an enjoyable conversation, the key to it is that you do need to do some preparation, and that will make it much less of a nervous undertaking if you've done sufficient preparation. And by that, I mean reread your supporting paper. There may have been 3 months elapsed between when you wrote your supporting paper and when you turn up for interview. So make sure you go back and be familiar with all the things you talked about. You've only got an hour and that time will whiz by, so you have to give focused answers and make sure when you're nervous that you're still able to do that. Because some people, when they're nervous, they're afraid of silence, and so they just want to keep talking, and actually we just don't have time for long answers. We need to cover a range of topics, so just be aware of your nerves and how that might discourage you from giving focused answers. And the interview process is about you confidently talking to fellow professional members and to show how your ability, your work is placed in the bigger picture. And we will get you into conversations about topical issues that have been happening in the news this week, because we want to hear you confidently talking to fellow professional members at this membership level. Remember, if you're weak on experience, then you need to show capability. What would you do? What are your good ideas that you haven't been able to do? But if you were put in such a position, what ought to be happening? And it's not a memory test. In fact, I can't even see all the notes that you're referring to, so you can have as many post-it notes around the screen as you want to, because I can't see those, and it's not meant to be a memory test. And that's also true of the code of conduct, which we'll ask you about at the end. You're not expected to memorize it, but just have a copy to refer to in front of you. It's a peer review process. You're going to be interviewed by fellow members of the profession, because at this membership level, you're representing the Institute every time you speak. So every casual conversation you have with people, you're giving a credible professional view that would be expected of a full member. And so often it's good to practice before the interview, having those everyday conversations with friends and colleagues on topical news issues, so that you're giving a credible environmental sustainability view. I've used this slide to death, but I'm going to use it one more time to summarise things, because I think it's really helpful to place you thinking about where you are in the membership hierarchy. REnvP is a really good membership standard that's just been introduced, and it's for those who are working really well at project level, where they're really shining at doing practical actions that are delivering excellent projects. For CEnv, we're looking for your extended spheres of influence more out into organisation. You're starting to move from the project to whole organisation level. And that's a continuous journey, because as you go forward and become, the fellow is primarily working at sector level. So they've gone beyond organisation, their reach of influence has gone out to sector level. So that, I think that's really helpful when you're thinking about which membership grade you want to apply for, and being successful at applying for those membership grades, particularly the full and fellow, is to think about it in this kind of way. There is support that you can draw on for full and CEnv if you go through the IEMA route, and it is quite popular, and I do recommend that you consider it. One thing you can do, you can ask for an assessor to review your written submission and give you draft feedback, and that's paid for at the moment. I think it's about £50, Megan, correct me on that, and you apply for that at the point when you submit your application pack. Alternatively, at any point, you can apply for a mentoring scheme, and that can either be focused on these membership level, or it can be general mentoring. You can specify which one you want, but perhaps if you want to practice some of these kind of everyday conversations with fellow membership, and you haven't got friends or colleagues that are willing to listen, then maybe you'd enjoy the mentoring support, which would enable you to practice that kind of thing. So I'm slightly over, I apologise, but hopefully we've still got time for a few questions, which I'll be happy to take.
Thanks, Carol. Brilliant. I think that's a really comprehensive presentation from all of our speakers there. We do have a few minutes to take some questions. I'm just going to switch back to my screen from current slide. Fabulous. So that's just a reminder of who we've got on the line there. I'm going to start by asking a current question, which relates to kind of how we're working now. And this has come from Dan. So Dan has asked, when applying for REnvP Bespoke, there's an expectation around ongoing CPD, but for some, the past 18 months have impacted on ability to undertake CPD due to furlough or workplace changes. Will that be taken into account within the application process? I'm not sure who the best person to answer that one is. Dip?
Yeah,
is that you?
I can answer that. Yeah, I mean, one thing that the REnvP Bespoke route does say is it's 3 years worth of CPD that we'll be looking at. So I understand completely that the last 18 months have been difficult for a lot of people. So, but do utilise the earlier ones as well in terms of your practical experience. And also, we're not just looking at practical experience as well for competencies. It can also be knowledge. So in the CPD, in the last 18 months, you may not have had an opportunity to practically carry out audits or do kind of EIA projects or other things or sustainability strategies, but you may hopefully have had a chance to catch up on some competencies in terms of the knowledge areas. So some reading, some webinars, some other things as well. And so the knowledge competencies are equally as important as the skill side as well. So please do kind of add those in, and definitely the assessors will bear that in mind, but it is 3 years worth of CPD. So just add in what you can and focus in on the knowledge areas for the last 18 months as well.
Fabulous. I hope that answers your question, Dan. Just having a flick through here. So this one here from Christine has asked, what sort of skill level should the two people providing the verification statements have? Especially when you're kind of working on your own in an organisation, that might be difficult. So how do you go around that, and what skill level should two people have? Would that be Carol?
Yeah, yes, I'm happy to answer that one. The best referees are the ones who know you the best. At full level, they're asked to score you against the skills competencies. And so it helps if they're a member of IEMA because they'll be familiar with those competencies. But it's not essential. The best referee is the one who knows you the best and actually vouch for the fact that your supporting statement is correct. That's their most important job, and it helps if they understand the IEMA competencies. So that's the way of looking at it. Choose the person who knows you the best.
And it's the same for practitioner level as well, because they do also mark you against the competencies there as well. But there's no point getting someone else who's an environmentalist but is not working with you and doesn't actually know anything about the case studies you're writing. So it should be someone who can verify those case studies, who knows you best, who works with you, who completes them.
Brilliant, thank you. There's a question here, I think this one might be Meg. Given REnvP is quite new, as a practitioner who may want to add that, is there a cost, and how do they go about adding it to current practitioner membership? I think a couple of people have asked that, and I've seen your response, so I just thought it'd be worth bringing that up so everyone could hear.
Yes, of course. At the moment, there is a cost associated with adding REnvP. At the moment, it is discounted to £124. The discount is offered by SocEnv, and they've actually just extended it for REnvP to the end of this year. So it's probably an incentive to get it in. In terms of applying, there is an application online under the practitioner membership page. I can put a link in the chat, but if you head to our practitioner membership landing page, follow the link to join online, you'll then get the options of which route you want to apply with.
Brilliant, thanks. I hope that answered your question, and as Meg said, yeah, there's the information there on the website, but if not, feel free to get in touch. Sophie has asked, once the written application is submitted, is there a specific time frame in which the interview has to take place after this? And is there a certain period of time in which you have to finalise the whole process by? So I guess Dip and Carol, is it different for practitioner and full?
I think this is for full membership because there's no interview at practitioner.
That makes sense. Carol?
It's probably Megan best, but I'll have a shot at it. There is a time limit. So read the question again.
I was going to say, Carol, do you want me to answer that one?
Yes.
Okay, so when you apply, there is a 4-week window to submit all your documentation. Once that's in, there's no specific time limit on your interview. We arrange it as soon as possible based on your availability and the availability of the assessors. In terms of hopefully successfully closing the entire application down, we aim to do that within 3 months at the moment, but the absolute deadline is within 12 months of your application date.
Brilliant, sorry about that. That was me asking the wrong things. We've got 1 more minute left, really, before we finish. I think if we don't get around to answering your question today, we'll see if we can get in touch, or please do get in touch with us via the phone lines or the info@iema.net email. This next one here is from Alicia. What happens if we don't pass? Can they reapply at a later date?
probably one for me again. Yes, of course you can. What happens with the dual routes is you will be refunded back the SocEnv fee element, but the IEMA membership fee is non-refundable. However, for practitioner membership, you are offered one free resit. I can talk through details sort of on a one-on-one basis if needed, so feel free to get in touch. We tend to review each circumstance individually, but yes, you can resit at any point if you want to.
Brilliant, thank you. So I think that's all we have time for in terms of questions. I've seen Meg's responded to some of them, but like I said, we will try and get in touch. Thank you to all of our speakers today. We've had Megan, Dip, Carol and Phil on the line here from the Society for the Environment. I'd like to thank you all for your time, and I will draw this webinar to a close.
Thank you very much.